Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and anybody who's listening into the podcast for the first time. We've got a very, very, very good guest this morning, Will Facey, who's the EVP Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia for WFS. And WFS is a company I know very well, a lot of respect for. Will, thanks very much for coming on.
Hey, you're very welcome. It's good to be on. My first experience.
Good. Well, I hope it'll be painless and it'll be something that you'll be happy to come back on again sometime in the future. So, Will, to start with, can you just give us a little bit of background, just what your responsibilities are, where you're based, and what happens in the day-to-day life of Will Facey?
Yeah. So WFS. I think most people will say, who are WFS, and they'll probably say they're the largest cargo operator in the world, and that's what WFS does, very successfully. So I was brought on by Craig Smith into the company about two and a half years ago to see what we could do with the ground business and actually develop that a bit, because previously ground in WFS was quite it was the poorer cousin in the sense of the less focus, and so actually my background is airline. I did 9.5 years with EasyJet, and prior to that I was with DHL, but my sort of last 9.5 years have really formulated my opinions on ground handling and stuff like that. So I was brought on to help grow the business, and that's my task really, is to grow that business. So we're concentrating on Europe, which is probably the easiest area in regard to actually trying to grow the business, but also we have operations in Asia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore. They've been there for a while, but they're primarily baggage handling as opposed to classical ground handling.
Yeah.
We do classical ground handling in Europe in a couple of countries, in UK and Spain. Really our sort of primary sort of sites. We do some small ramp handling in Paris, but we also do a lot of baggage handling in Paris. I think we handle about 35 million bags in Paris. So I think in Paris you'd be referred to as the baggage handler as opposed to the ground handler.
Yeah. But no mean task nonetheless. Will, now obviously things have been changed, and things have changed now with this damn virus. Everybody's talking about the new normal. Obviously it's had a huge impact on the passenger side of the business, but I would imagine in some areas you're still pretty active in supporting the cargo and the PPE and the uplifts. What have you guys actually been doing, and where?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the sort of the normal flying public passenger traffic, that's down sort of 94%, right? So it's massive, right? But I think we've for example in Madrid we're doing quite a lot of handling of cargo aircraft only. So typically the integrators or Amazon, for example, do a lot of handling down there, and they've obviously seen quite an uplift in traffic. So we've been servicing that. We have some of these passenger aircraft with cargo, particularly in the cabin. We've had quite a few of those in Madrid as well. Some in Paris. So we've been focusing on that. In the UK, it's been we're an operation that really services EasyJet. So EasyJet closed down, so we've furloughed 99.9% of our staff in the UK. So it's been very clean in the UK. But in Spain, it's sort of it's ticking along. And if it isn't unloading passenger aircraft with cargo or cargo aircraft, it's moving other aircraft around. For example, in Seville, we're moving one of our customers' aircraft around for maintenance and rotating those aircraft. So there's odds and sods going on. Asia is slightly is slightly different. We actually run a cruise terminal in Hong Kong, so that's been closed down or suspended operation. In Hong Kong airport itself, I think we're effectively closed for baggage handling. I think Cathay are flying, that as an example of scale. I think Cathay are flying sort of servicing 12 airports a week, or sorry, a day, but it's sort of 500-600 passengers a day. It's minute volumes. But the upside in Hong Kong for us is a strange one. Is we run a facility where we look after events, and that events facility has been turned into a COVID testing facility for quarantined people. So we lose in one hand and gain in the other, and it's been odds and sods. But generally, there's no, it's massively down, and our focus has really been of the operations that we're doing it safely, and we're servicing the customers. But the rest of it is really just cash protection. Thinking about the future in regard to sort of budgeting, looking after the people, taking advantage of all the government support schemes across Europe, and it seems to be one conference call after another at the moment. So it's been quite busy.
It is indeed. Something that you said earlier, you're talking about the unloading of passenger aircraft with cargo, and people are terming it as preighters. We've had a few people on, and even Glyn Hughes from IATA, and also Michael Rossell from ACI, and we were talking about the criteria and the guidelines that the public see, and they see these announcements that says this is what you should do, etc., etc. And what we were trying to explain is that in situations like that, there are exceptions for critical activities like frontline workers. So we were talking about the fact that if you can't maintain the social distancing criteria, and obviously you've got masks, you've got the health PPE, and especially when you're loading and unloading a passenger aircraft with cargo, you're handballing from one person to another, and they're in a lot closer proximity. How are the staff adapting to situations like that?
Yeah, I think we're taking all the precautions we can, and we've been very open with the staff. And we're giving them the masks, and we're giving them the gloves, and making sure all the disciplines are in place. And of course, social distancing, as we're saying, we've got to try and maintain that. But I think everyone's an adult, and everyone's got they make their own decision in regard to how they self-enforce that. And I think it's important that when unloading these freighters, firstly we do it safely. So the biggest risk for us is going from heights and things like that. So we really make sure that it's really safe. Make sure we've got enough people doing it. So I'm not going to, we're not going to throw 2 or 3 people to unload the upper deck. And so firstly, resourcing, equipment, process, it's got to stack up. It's got to be right. Social distancing, we've got to we've got to try and maintain as much as we can. But I think everyone's an adult, and we just got to. No, they are indeed, and obviously there's another importance. Even though it's going to take longer, there's still certain limitations to how long the aircraft can stay on the ground because of the crewing and everything. So that's another, it's another added pressure. But for me, something that obviously. A lot of respect to all of the healthcare workers and everybody, that one would assume is associated with healthcare, but also the people on the front line who help the whole supply chain and the world as we know it just ticking over and rolling the way it should be. I mean, it's incredible what they're doing, and I think both cargo and ground handling are coming into their own now. People are realising how important it is to keep those sectors going. Yeah, I think you're right on saying that, because I think even when we've been talking to government, we always stress that there's 3 parts to the triangle, 3 sides to the triangle in regard to the airlines, the airports, and the ground handlers. And and I think even prior to COVID, I think even talking to government, they're sort of saying, oh yeah, ground handlers, what do you do? And so I think ground handling it's always been. I think, you said it yourself, I think it's easier to be an airline than it is to be a ground handler, because, you're in a buying situation from the perspective of an airline. But ground handlers, it's a tough market, and it's typically low margin stuff. It's hard, it's seasonal, it's repetitive, it's also dangerous. And, you've got to be, you've got to keep your wits about you all the time. And it's, I think it's...
Exactly. And I personally... Sorry?
Boys do a good job. I'm very proud of them.
That's nice. Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing you're saying that, Will. I had to go to a care home where my father is at the moment, and dropped some bits and pieces off. And as we were coming out, some of the nurses and the care workers were there, and they were just walking towards the car park. And I just said to them, I said, ladies, I said, you know, I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, really appreciate it, etc. And then just carried on. And then one of them said, excuse me. And I turned around and they said, you know, we really appreciate that. So I think sometimes the obvious things we think we don't say enough, but when we do, it has a big impact. So it's nice what you said there about the team, Will. Getting back now to the safety issues and also to, you know, how people adapt to the pressures that they're under. The QHSS&E now, I think, is letters that all boards, shareholders and everybody are going to take a lot more seriously in the future when they do the wrap up to this virus, because not just in our business, every country, every government didn't really appreciate the things that should or could have been done way ahead of time. So I think a lot more focus will come, especially from shareholders and the public and everything. Businesses will need to be sustainable and have a greater focus on continuity and risk awareness than ever before. And I'm sure you guys are looking at things like that. I mean, in our business, we're used to regulatory change and criteria. So whether it's an earthquake, you know, social issue, whether it's a flood, a fire, whatever, terrorism, we've had to deal with so many different impacts. But I think in the future now, there's going to be a huge focus on health and hygiene and also business sustainability and continuity.
Yeah, I think you're right. But, you know, I sort of, we have to remember this is the first time it's ever happened, right? In the sense of the scale. And, you know, is it going to happen to the same scale again in the future? I don't know. I don't know if you remember the volcano. I can't remember where it was, 2010 or 11 or whatever it was, right? And I was working EasyJet at the time, and you know, this ash cloud came across, and it was completely devastating for Europe, and then I think we spent in EasyJet probably 3 or 4 years developing just in case it happens again, right? And it did happen again, but it reacted differently, and it was you know, different setup and different environment. So coming back to this, you know, will this COVID ever be as it is today in regard to the reaction of the industry or to the society, or will society adapt to it? I don't know. And I think you know, in 6 months' time, when there is a vaccine or when people have accepted it's part of society, will there be a higher degree of acceptance to travel and taking the risk, or will governments react in such an aggressive way again? I don't know. So, but one thing for sure is, you know, the work we've had to do in protecting cash or protecting the business it's been a massive education in the sense of for everyone in regard to day-to-day looking at liquidity, you know, so that's been very positive. We will become financial experts in liquidity, but I think, you know, will it happen as deep again? I don't know. You know, I could be shot for saying it, but you know, I don't. This is the first time it's happened in aviation history. Will it happen again? Not to the same scale, I don't think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But whatever happens, it won't go back to the way it was, and there will be a new normal.
Yeah, I think it will go back, but I think people will find a new equilibrium. I think people will accept risk.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I think I've had it, therefore I'm immune, or actually I know 9 out of 10 people who've had it and they got away with it, and you know, okay, fine, let's do it. And,
yeah.
You know, but
I think that's going to be the biggest factor to people's own barometer. You know, they've got the fear and then they've got the confidence. So I think companies, what they do and how well they publish it, and you were talking about your time with EasyJet, some of the LCCs have actually put out some good videos of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I think if people relate to that, they'll reduce then their amount of fear and they'll start to support it, but they'll support the ones that they think are doing what should be done. And that's also going to be very important for airports. So from point to point, people are going to want to be knowing that they're going to get the same level of hygienic support at the front end as well as the back end, and also during the middle. So it's an awful lot of extra pressure on you guys.
Yeah, we've actually seen that. I think I don't think it's clear yet in regard to what the government guidelines are in regard to what's going to happen in airports. So a customer journey at the moment, if you're flying out of Edinburgh or Madrid or Seville or CDG, wherever, I think it's going to be different, right? And the customers will sort of say, why am I being screened in this country but not another country? Or why am I getting temperature checks? Or why am I, why is that person getting something and I'm not getting? Is it because, so I think that's going to take a bit of time to settle down. And I think common sense also and practical sense will kick in. But the danger we've got at the moment is because there's no sort of real clarity on what's going to happen. You've got certain airports thinking the right thing to do is put in all of these measures. So you've got some airports that are hypersensitive and doing stuff, and other airports seem to be much more pragmatic about things. And also the airlines, I think the airlines, it's not clear yet, what they're going to do. And I think they probably admit that they're not totally clear yet because they're probably waiting for guidelines as well.
Yeah, I think the two things that, and it's just my opinion. I'm not an expert by any means, but in my opinion, an airport can't restrict the numbers of people because it just wouldn't be practical to run the airport. And the same thing for an airline whilst you're on board. So I think the everything that has to happen now, like you said, is whether or not people have had it, whether or not people have got a confidence level, but also the 3TI, the track, trace, test, and then isolate. Those are the things that have to be done, and the sooner they do that, the better. But I think people will start to see, a lot more people at check-ins wearing full masks instead of the face mask, and there'll be a lot more automated kiosks and things like that. So where possible, automation and protection of the individuals, I think people will see that. But I think ultimately it will be
even
how confident they are.
Most people feel funny or stupid wearing a mask when they're out, don't they?
Yeah.
I don't know if you go out and when you go to a supermarket you put a mask on or not, but I think you might see 5-10% of people wearing masks at the moment, whereas in 3 months' time it might be completely normal. And actually everyone wears a mask, not knowing that it's more about protecting others as opposed to protecting yourself. And it's a mindset. It's just allowing the public to get that confidence, to get that feeling of what the norm is. And I think that will happen to air travel as well. I think most people will wear masks, and they'll understand that actually, you're boarding from the rear of the aircraft now instead of the front of the aircraft, and you understand why. And the check-in queues or the bag drop queues have gone away because now it's really, you have to use the app, right? You have to check in on the app, and there's less risk of sort of getting congested queues and stuff like that. So I think people will find the new norm, and I think as soon as that happens, I think the recovery will start to come back, and I'm confident that.
I think you're right there, and the WHO with their 3C concept of communication, cooperation, and collaboration. I think you've hit it on the head there with how well people are informed, and what you said about the masks. It's more a matter of respect and courtesy for others that you put one on yourself rather than yourself protecting yourself.
Totally integrated in Asia is the norm. And it's people even before COVID. It was because they had a cold and they didn't want to spread it.
Yeah, no, I think it's very, very different with the way people think about it. But the more it's communicated and informed, I think the easier it will be. And like you say, people will look at people not wearing them as if they're not considerate, rather than the fact that they're not worried about the infection themselves. Now, cooperation and collaboration. I think in the past, so many people, they're so worried about their own businesses, etc., that they forget sometimes to think that if the cooperation levels are greater, everything works smoother. And for airports, like you said, with the triangular impact, if people started to grow the cake and then decide on the size of the slice, it's much better that they do things in a collaborative fashion than doing things independently. And I genuinely hope that airports and airlines especially will start looking at ground handlers as not just the washing machine that they've been in the past, but a real integral part of the infrastructure and the supply chain, and there'll be a different type of partnership.
Yeah, I think, but to immediately put sort of the counter on that is, airlines are going to struggle in the next recovery phase of surviving, and I'm sure that the margins are going to be stretched. So they're going to be also looking for the best value, lowest cost operation. So it wouldn't be, it's not rocket science to work out that that airlines are definitely going to be very keen on price. And historically in the ground handling market, almost there's in some countries there's been race to the bottom on price, and from a WFS perspective, I'm not interested in losing money or not making money or even paying airlines to almost handle them.
Exactly.
So if someone else wants to do that, then great, let them do it, but we're not.
No, exactly. I've brought those points up with Michael, with Glyn, with Dimitri, about the fact that almost as if people should be made to have a different sort of standard of procurement criteria, whereby there should be specific loading if it's to do with safety and security and health.
Yeah, but it's a given. It's a given. It's got to be safe and it's got to be secure. It's a given. But market forces will dictate whether a supplier thinks they can offer that airline the service and the price, and the airline will invariably push for more and more.
I'm the eternal optimist. I'm hoping, and I've had so many questions with people saying that, with all the pressures now on cost-driven contracts, how will that affect safety and the standards, etc. And whilst myself, we would always say safety and security are the two of the most solid pillars in the industry, which is why it's so safe, and that won't change. But ultimately, if there are so much pressures, it could start to influence in some areas, which is why the feeling of an organisation being sustainable, agile, resilient, and also having a firm eye on continuity, it gives a different sort of a culture within an organisation. And I'm hoping that that's what people will see, because the impact that this has had in a relatively short period of time, you're looking at basically 3 months, and so many companies with, struggling with cash flow and all other problems, it's a real eye opener. Yeah.
I don't think, personally from our perspective, we would never compromise on that safety and take the gambles of, let's think we can get away with it, or let's price it just to capture the market and see what we can do later to recover on the margin. It's just, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's been proven.
That's good to hear. Now, as far as all the people that are furloughed, Will, what sort of continued communication do you have with them, and things like where they're due for training updates or just general information, and also just their minds, because of people worrying about mortgages and worrying about their jobs and stuff. Are you doing regular communication with all the staff and the team?
Yeah, we are. I think communicating is, for human beings, in the sense of actually taking some anxiety away and things like that. So we do send communications out, what's going on, and clarifying, particularly when something comes out from the government, what's, for example, the last one from the Chancellor was, the extension till October and stuff like that. So, we just push communications out. So, our philosophy is, I'm glad they're on furlough, in the UK, and then there's various same systems in the rest of Europe called different things. But the furlough principle is good. I think the government did a very good job to do that. I don't think there was much alternative but to do something, which is I'm glad they did it. So we will maximise the use of furlough for as long as possible, in the sense of I'd rather have staff on furlough than make them redundant now. And I think it's taken some of the anxiety away from staff. The fact that they get 80% of their salary. Mostly, most of our staff are below the cap of 2,500. So they get 80% of their salary. And I think that's a massive step for anxiety, and because it's an anxious world. I think
Yeah.
You know, if you,
And
you know, there's lots of airlines that are laying off thousands of people. You know, and you know, I understand why they're doing that, but you know, at the same time, we're in some ways we got the advantage of being quite small in ground handling because we're still growing. So I don't have thousands of people that I have to lay off. You know, I've got hundreds of people that I'm protecting in the UK, and okay, there's thousands in the rest of Europe, but it's a different sort of scheme. So communication's key. But you know, we've been talking to the airlines regularly, and saying, okay, when are you starting? What's happening? What's the thinking? You know, and we've got good comms channels with them. So as soon as we start to get a feeling of what's happening or coming down the pipeline, we can start preparing and pulling staff back in. And, you know, but you know, most airlines are not thinking, and you know, mid-June is what I'm hearing now is the earliest possible for something. But put it this way, for the staff, you know, I'd rather the staff be at home furloughed and being paid than in the process of being redundant or made redundant. And
yeah, no, it's a
so
tough.
I think it's good.
Yeah, it's a tough
I take
situation.
my hat off to the government for doing it, but it's been and stuff we've been working with the government on is actually you can't stop the furlough with this cliff edge, because the danger is all you're doing is just delaying redundancy process. Because the danger, you've got recovery much slower than planned. You've got all of these people coming back on, and you've got the gap between, you know, supply and demand. And you know, with low margin ground handling, there is no alternative. You have to get rid of these people, otherwise the company goes bust.
Yeah, and I think as you said,
so
there'll be a.
Tapering is really important. Which again, they've talked. They haven't finalised the details on yet, but you know, it's till October. Okay, they talk about from August onwards. There's some form of company support that's going to have to be added in, and whether that's the government only supplies 60% of salary and we have to top up or something or whatever. But it's not firmed up. But I think the governments they're in tune with obviously the consultation dates or the potential dates mid-month for 45 days. So we've got a bit of confidence that prior to those crunch days we get more information.
Yeah, well, I think that's also a sensible approach that they're making as well, because the weaning off, like you said, it can't be a shock because obviously there's no other option. Yeah. But also when they start to wean off, they'll allow the people then to be doing support activities for the companies that are also struggling with some of the administrative and other areas that need to be done irrespective of people being there or not. Yeah,
but even, you know, they talk about August, and we've tried to pull it forward a bit, right? But the flexibility on the furlough scheme is you can be part-time furloughed and part-time work, which is great, because what we'll do is we'll hopefully rotate people through.
Exactly.
So maybe we work next week part-time. So we keep people alive, get them fresh again, because they can't do any work when they're on furlough. They can't do training. It's not legal, right? So once they're on furlough, they're on furlough. So, you know, ideally, I don't want to lose the people, because it takes 3 to 4 months to get people back in as recovery comes back in. You've got all the security checks, you've got all the training.
Exactly.
And if there's a mechanism where we can rotate people and keep people, you know, recurrent, then that's great. That's ideal. Yeah, that's, you know, it depends on what the government support is post August, and also how the recovery looks post August in regard to volume and demand.
Yeah, no, I agree, Will. And I think as they sort of come down, they'll give a little bit more concession back to the companies to say, look, we now appreciate that you do need to train, you do need to get people prepared, so we'll allow a certain balance. And I think that'll be the best way that they actually do it moving forward.
Yeah, the key is having the ability to be part-time furloughed and part-time working, the same person. That's key.
Yeah.
Because you can only be furloughed or you can be employed at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And that I think that'll have to change. And that's the next set of the 3 C's approach, which is to do with clarification, which is what everybody waits for, and then coordination, and then control. Because I would imagine as soon as things do start to open up, if the signals and the triggers are positive, you know, all the carriers, everybody will want to do it as quick as possible, and that's also another challenge for yourself.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day where we can start again, I must admit.
Yeah, I think everybody is. Yeah, yeah. No, it's amazing what you didn't realise you would miss and this has made a lot of basic values and principles, you know, come to the fore with people. And I think, please God, a lot of those learning issues will carry on as we go forward, you know.
It's going to get back. It will recover. We will recover. We'll look back in 12 months' time saying, God, that was horrible. But we will get back.
Yeah.
People.
And can I ask you, are you guys looking at, you know, sort of contingencies in case there was a second wave, or, you know, are you starting to focus more now on that level of crisis management?
Yeah, we've got process and procedures in place to, you know, if there would be another increase in infection rate or more quarantines or more, you know, sort of lockdowns, I think we'd reuse what we've used already this first cycle. But, you know, the danger is you've got plan on top of plans and plans and plans, and actually something changes anyway and it wipes all that work out. So it's we're just being pragmatic on it, to be honest.
Okay.
And looking at what's in front of us and dealing with it.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Now, if I was to ask you, what three things would you like to see moving forward in the business as a result of the impact of the virus and the lessons that everybody's learned, whether it be from regulators to airports to carriers and to your own business sector, what would those three things be?
I would like to see consistency of application of guidelines at airports or airlines, or, you know, so effectively a customer journey is pretty similar from wherever they fly. So I'd like to see that harmonization. I would like to see some success and surprises in regard to increasing demand, and actually people are surprised by how quickly it bounces back. And I would like to see realistic, good, positive behaviour and relationships between airports, airlines and ground handlers in regard to actually sustainable futures, rather than trying to land grab or financial grab. And I think it's you know, those are the three broad brush issues I'd like to see. But I think probably the high priority is consistency of application, harmonisation.
I think, yeah, the harmonisation is so important. But I think for a hat trick or a wish list hat trick, I think that's pretty on the ball there, Will. So
I'd like people to say how amazing it was to see that fast recovery. That's what I want to see and hear.
Yeah, fast, and I think different, because people they've got to learn for this. And I was saying to one of my kids the other day, you know, it's almost, it doesn't matter what religion anybody is, it's almost as if somebody up there was looking down and saying, whoa, you know, things are going a little bit too fast, getting a little bit out of hand. You know, there needs to be a little recovery or a little change, and hopefully people be a lot nicer to each other. And one of the things that I hope is that people have a long memory and they remember all the care workers, the nurses, you know, because they're obviously going to have a hard time coming out of this as well. And please God, everybody will remember what they did. It's incredible. There's
been so many stories of fantastic positive interactions, supports, that you know it balances out against the tragic, the really sad, the really awful moments where you think, oh God, that's just awful, right? Because you invariably you translate it to yourself or to the company or to, you know, and just think there've been so many tragic moments, but at the same time, it's best human behaviours that come out sometimes, and it makes you feel proud at work as part of a company, but also makes you feel proud as an individual in the sense of actually, you know, it could be the small stuff to helping the neighbours to actually collaborative stuff, you know, working across the industry. And you know, I think most people will see this as a very sad time, very tragic time for many thousands of people, but they'll also look it back as a crossroads to say, you know what, that's where things changed. And if we lose that, that's a shocking thing to do, and I think we shouldn't lose it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's a tough time, and it has been a tough time for so many, and we can't forget it. But I think you're right. I think it will be the crossroads where people say that's where things changed, and that's why they changed, and now we've got to make sure that those changes are not wasted. you know, for the poor people who didn't come out of it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right, Will, we're nearly at the end, my friend. So I think it was lovely talking to you. And WFS, great company, and obviously a lot of challenges, but a lot of opportunities moving forward. But the one thing that's definite is that, you know, everybody in the ground handling business, they really, really are an integral part now in the supply chain, and they need to be recognised for that and part of everything that happens moving forward. So when it comes to carriers and airports, I think they need to take a lot more notice now of the ground handling community.
Yeah, no, I'm for that. I think collaboration is great, and you know, we just got to continue to build on it, being open and transparent and honest with each other, and you know, I think that
do all the
relationship
things we've been saying we should be doing. I said, do all the things we've said we should be doing for a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
But I must say, some of the things that I've seen from ICAO and the state letters and the way they've responded, an awful lot of the legacy bureaucracy and administration seems to have been managed to be able to be put to one side, and they're turning into an effective enabler now, which is, I think, very positive. And then hopefully customs and what's going on between some of the governments, with the understanding from the representative bodies why they have to do certain things, like with flight crews, etc. Everybody is really starting to rally round. So I think collaboration is the key now, and it's working well. Yeah, okay. Right, on that positive note, sir, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on. I wish you and everybody in the WFS family great success. And I think it's nice, what the things you specifically said about your particular team. So it's greatly appreciated and respected. So thank you very much, Will.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the thanks on. See you later. Bye-bye.